For those of you who think no one's coming to see my company page, Google your business name. Your results will be in the top 5 on the first page of Google results. You may be generating traffic from other places, but if people type in your company name in Google, the LinkedIn company page is right up at the top. And because LinkedIn's a trusted platform, what am I going to do if I'm researching? Click on it. And again, what are they going to find? So set the page up for success. Now, you don't have to do a lot of content on company pages. You also have the option, if you wanted to, post multiple times on company pages. For most of us, that is more than we can manage. So I would say try and at least give something a post once a week, once every 2 weeks, but to have a presence and just keep it turning over. Make sure it's got all the right settings. Make sure that you completed the new features. Make sure that you do those and you'll get rewarded.
Welcome to the Internal Marketing Podcast, the unique podcast series where we flip the marketing conversation from external to internal, exploring all the ways that you can build a brand and drive growth by engaging and empowering company employees to become powerful advocates of the brand. I'm your host, Kerry-Ann Stimson, and I'm very happy to be bringing you this episode where we'll be discussing how you can create and leverage a winning company page on LinkedIn. But before we get started, if you're looking for more practical resources and powerful perspectives about leveraging the power of internal marketing, then the Happy Monday Club is the newsletter for you. Every Monday, the team over at Workshop puts together an inspiring and uplifting list of articles from some of the world's best workplaces, along with their latest internal communication templates and the occasional giveaway or surprise. Join over 15,000 communications professionals and sign up at happymondayclub.com. And of course, Workshop is the global sponsor of Season 3 of the Internal Marketing Podcast. Thank you, Workshop. I'm happy to have you on board. So let's jump into this conversation with my featured guest, Michelle J. Raymond. Now, Michelle is the founder and LinkedIn B2B strategist of Good Trading Company, and she'll be sharing how you can create and leverage a winning company page on LinkedIn. Hi, Michelle. How are you? Welcome to the Internal Marketing Podcast. It's great to have you.
I am absolutely fabulous, Kerry-Ann, and I can't wait to jump into this conversation with you.
It is going to be a great conversation, and I'm just going to jump right into it. And the reality is, I got the idea for this particular episode following your awesome content on LinkedIn. That's how we connected. And we know we're going to hear more about you and your business and your books and all of that great stuff later on in the conversation. But following your content sent off some, what I would say, light bulbs in my brain, because I'll just go back a little bit. So we're in season 3 of my podcast. In season 1, what was probably, I feel like, the second episode of season 1, I had another awesome guest on, and she's Luann Wise, and I love her. I've also discovered her on LinkedIn, and the majority of her platform is really about how do you win on social media, right? Especially on a platform like LinkedIn, right? And in that conversation, we're talking about how do you win on LinkedIn kind of a thing. And I got the sense, the understanding I came away with having had that discussion with her was she was really talking about, well, how do you use a company page to win on a platform like LinkedIn versus leveraging the voices of your employees? No, I hope I'm not misquoting her, but my understanding again from the conversation is that her experience with company pages really wasn't all that to write home about, right? So she works with many clients, and in her experience, she said when she would do the research on company pages with her clients, the findings were interesting, particularly when it came to when she started to dissect the followers of the company pages. She said instead of being what you would want it to be, which is, a bunch of all of your clients and prospective clients, your ICPs, your ideal client profile type of people following you, they saw a lot of unwanted folks, with due respect. So a lot of students, people searching for jobs who are kind of just following your page to see if you post any vacancies kind of a thing. And she said, it really, in her view, was not an effective tool to build a brand and generate sales or sales leads because it just wasn't effective at pulling in the right people. So her recommendation, again, my understanding is that focus your energies in empowering and leveraging the brands of your employees, because they're the ones with the networks of people that you want to be talking to. They can attract them in a powerful and authentic way. And that is part of what she does. She helps to support people in companies to be able to do that. And it was interesting. And I mean, it was a great conversation. And then when I started to follow you, and here comes Michelle, who says, hey, there is gold in them hills with the company pages. And I'm like, I love to have contrarian opinions on a podcast like this. That's the purpose of having great conversations. You have opposing points of view. And in fact, sometimes you find that they could all work together. So I said, you know what? Let's have Michelle on to talk about how we can win with your company page, especially on a platform like LinkedIn, but on social media in general. We'll get into it. And so I'm very excited to get into this conversation with you. And Michelle, I always like to start off with a level setting question in my podcast. And that level setting question is because I really don't like to assume. I have an international audience of listeners. Last check, people listen to my podcast from about 17 different countries, including Spanish-speaking ones, right? So I don't want anybody to misunderstand when we're referring to what is a company page. When we're talking about a company page, what is that? Could you define that for us, please?
Yeah, great place to start. And I'm even more excited to have this conversation now I know the background a little bit more, because it's not uncommon to have that kind of feedback. So let's start. What is a company page? So on LinkedIn, we've kind of got it divided into two sections. We have the LinkedIn personal profiles, which we can use as individuals, and those individuals can be employees. They can also be business owners. So we've got people throughout the spectrum that can have a LinkedIn profile. You can also then go and set up a company page for your business. Now, the company page actually works different. It is not the same as your LinkedIn profile, although there's lots of crossover. So for me personally, there's always some challenges with company pages, which I'm sure we're going to cover, but ultimately it's a place that brings employees together. And I kind of think about it like a sporting team, like everyone puts on the same jersey, they all go to training in the same place. It's about how do you bring those employees together so they work for a brand that they're proud of. They work for a brand that opens doors for them. Now, I need to confess that I come from a sales background. So a lot of what I'm going to share today is motivated by what will help people open doors to sell more, to attract the right opportunities that are much easier to convert. Now, for me personally, I've worked in all kinds of companies where I've built my own personal brand. And then I've worked for companies that didn't have a company brand on LinkedIn by using their company page. And I can tell you, when you have the backing of the company page and the brand to lift you up, it just amplifies you. So just to set the stage, I'm not anti-personal brands. I'm not anti-LinkedIn profiles. I'm a cake and eat it kind of girl. So take the best of the profiles, take the best of the company page, and bring them together, and you get faster and better results.
I love that. And I love that clarification, because I agree. At the end of the day, this is the internal marketing podcast, or the outcome that we have of better engaging and empowering our employees to be advocates of the brand. And it's the company brand. So if we can bring both together and create that win-win for the brand from a company page perspective, as well as the win for, yes, the personal brands of the employees. You and I have had that conversation, but also the win for the company of leveraging those employees' personal brands. I mean, I just see awesome results all around. So you've level set for us, Michelle. So that company page is really under the banner of the company brand, right? So if you go on LinkedIn, if it's ABC Limited has that page on LinkedIn. Now, typically, I'd love to get your sense of what are you seeing right now where company page content is concerned. So there are many company pages on a platform like LinkedIn, social media in general. But what kind of content are you seeing out there, and what's your assessment of it all?
When I first started looking at company pages about 2.5 years ago, they made me want to cry. They were just broadcasts of facts and figures and all about the company, which is why they got such a bad reputation. So company pages for me had a content problem. They are effective, but the content that people were putting out, it was all about the company. And we're not interested in that. COVID comes along, throws the world upside down on its head, and people had to reassess what's going on. So as far as what's happening with company pages during that time, and I mentioned COVID because there's a significant event that changed company pages. What changed? Everybody took their advertising spend off Facebook, Instagram, and all the other platforms and put it onto LinkedIn. LinkedIn have had record ad spends in the last 3 years, like mind-blowing numbers of growth. When you look at that, why is that important? Because you need a company page to be able to run those ads. When I first started talking about company pages, the LinkedIn Pages team that I get to work with in the background, they had about 3 or 4 people in the team. That's now circa 40 people in just that short period of time. We've seen features come through like crazy in that time. So if people haven't had a look at a company page in recent history, and maybe you tried it some time ago, come back, give them another look, because you are going to be surprised at how much is in there. The content that works best on a company page, almost you cannot tell that it's not a personal post, right? Coming from an individual. The lines are so blurred, the style and formats are so close that companies that actually have adjusted and start adding value to the audience, a brand should be adding just as much value as the employees with their thought leadership. And those that do it well, they're the ones that we're seeing succeeding. Now, one of the reasons that I say to people, look, you've got to build up that company brand. As much as I'm absolutely on board for building up employees, here's why. I used to work for a company and I come from the beauty industry. I used to sell all the chemicals that you can't pronounce on the back of your shampoo bottles. And I loved it. And that's where I first got into social selling on LinkedIn. I built up an amazing niche community, about 5,000 followers all around the world. And you know what? One day I changed jobs, and the company that I worked for, I said goodbye, and I took my 5,000 followers and I went elsewhere. Now, they didn't have a company brand set up on LinkedIn. They had nothing. So after I left, there was a void. There was nothing. And I took all my expertise and followers with me. Now, with things like the Great Resignation and Great Reshuffle and all of these, things that are going on for employees across the world, there's a lot of turmoil and shakeup in traditional industries. What happens is if you're a company that doesn't also have a company brand, you will lose that branding that goes with your employees when they move. Now, that's not necessarily 100% a bad thing because as we've discussed before, there's a legacy that goes with them. So it's not all bad, but you have to think if you lost your employee, what is your insurance policy for the business? And for me, it's building that business brand using a company page.
That's an interesting perspective. I really didn't think of it like that because you're right. You, as the employee, you would have built up a following who, your company had been benefiting, but at the end of the day, the real estate is really yours and the followers are yours. And once you go, they kind of go with you. So if the company didn't have their own presence and simultaneously building up their own followers, that really would have been a challenge. Question, again, kind of jumping back to one of the takeaways I took from that episode with Luann, with her experience about the kinds of people that were following company pages and those company pages not necessarily attracting the right kind of target client. But 2 things really. Who should the company page be targeting exactly? And I guess one would say, well, the obvious answer is your customers. That's probably yes. But should the company page targeting strategy, because it's social media, be traditional as we see it, or should there be other people that we should consider engaging on the company page? And in line with that, the follow-up question to that is, how do they design their content strategy to kind of make sure that they are attracting all of the constituents that they should be attracting?
In my mind, the company page is a hub for a B2B community. Now, when we build a community, that's not just based on your ideal clients. Now, traditionally, again, when we put those blinkers on, and again, I'm a salesperson, I'm all for selling, but the easiest way to do it is to build a community. Now, what I mean by that is build a 360-degree community for your industry. So that could be suppliers, it could be regulatory people, it could be complementary services. In some cases, it might even make sense that your competitors are following your page. And people are looking at me going, that is so counterintuitive. Why would you do that? And I like it to, when you drive past and there's a nightclub and there's a lineup out the door and everybody wants to get in and you're wondering, what's going on in there? I want to be a part of that because everyone else is over there. Then that's what happens. And realistically, in most industries, when you've worked in them long enough, quite often you skip jobs, work for a competitor, come back. The industry is quite tight-knit anyway. Everybody knows what everybody's doing. the thing that you share in common is a passion about the same thing. And so it can often be those theoretical competitors that are coming in and adding value to the conversation. When you don't feel threatened and concerned and all of those things that happen when people want to hold back personal brands and hold back and not tell anyone what they're doing on LinkedIn, when you push that aside and be confident in your own company's abilities and confident and trust your employees, like this is when you can actually say, we are the go-to place. We are where you want to be, and everybody come and join us because we are the one source where you can get all of your information. Why? Because everybody's here. And the value that you can add to the conversation by getting insights from the whole industry becomes so much more valuable, and other people recognize that. To address the point of what happens with the audience, like how do you attract the right people? One of the things that has changed over the last 2 years, when I first started managing company pages, essentially you would have to do lots and lots of promotion to try and get people to follow your page. Now that's hard work and not everybody's interested in doing that. Especially sometimes the people that are managing the page may not be the same people that have relationships in the industries. So quite often a marketing team might manage the company page, but the sales team are out building relationships, on the forefront. So what we actually got is a new feature, which is invites for inviting first degree connections. Now, what that means is you can actually directly invite the people that you want to come and follow the page. Now, we also have filters within those invites. And so you can select by geography, you can select by industry, you could even select by schools that people have been to if you want to target that. You also get the option to target particular companies. So for those that are doing like account-based marketing, it's brilliant. Now, the more that you use this and the more that you're focused, as I said, you'll actually come in and start to build that B2B community. Now, I would start off close, current customers, former customers, potential customers, and then work my way out over time because those that know you are more likely to follow, they're more likely to engage, and they're the ones that you want to continue to nurture in case there's a chance of obviously repeat sales in the future. It's also setting up your employees for success because imagine if the company's got a strong brand and they do a post about an employee and how amazing they are, then that just really puts that employee on a pedestal out in the industry. And again, it just opens up more opportunities. So we come back to this concept of using them in combination, using one brand to lift the other brand. And the reverse is true. The employees can say, look how great my company is. And it works both ways. Pages really have changed in the last 2 years. And I don't say that just for the sake of it. It's crazy how much in such a short period of time they have changed. And they will continue to change even more in the next 5 years.
Exciting times ahead. And I'm glad you used the word engagement because it gave me another question as well, which is, so you have the company page. So you've so beautifully outlined an approach to the kind of content you should be designing to bring and bring and engage that community together. Bring them together and engage them. Question, because I've seen posts on LinkedIn from folks who say, even though it's your company page, how the page engages with its followers or even people who it would like to have become followers and part of their community, the company page should behave like a human. For example, the company page can go and like other people's stuff and comment on other people's stuff, much the same way a human, quote unquote, human would. What's your take on that? How should a company page behave in day-to-day engagement beyond inviting people to follow and posting great content and certainly engaging with those who comment under their own posts? Should they be kind of going out and being human in their interaction and commenting and stuff? What's your suggestion there?
Look, it's no surprises that people want to do business with people they like. And the same applies to brands. Now, we got the feature only in the last 6 months to be able to easily comment as a company page. Now, I think that will evolve further in the future, but here's why I think it's important. For those that say people don't want to deal with a logo, that's normally the first comeback that I get, when I say go and comment as your company page. Those people, what I want you to do when you write a comment as your company page need to be as human as possible. But the key point is to add value to the conversation. Now, people don't get hung up on who actually posted it. When you're looking at it and adding value to their conversation, when you're solving their challenges, when you're helping point them in the right direction, because ultimately that's what they're looking for. If I'm looking for answers, do I really care what the little logo is, if it's a logo or if it's Michelle's photo? Not particularly. I just want the answer to my question. The way that you can sometimes get around it, some advice that I give people is you can comment as the company page, and whoever did it, you could tag an employee in on the end to say, hey, it was me that actually wrote this. So you get that double benefit again at promoting both the company and then giving that human touch. So we've got options. Where I see people go wrong is quite often they use the company page to almost go and spam other people's contents. And that, spam is not good no matter what you do, where you are. Spam is spam. So for those people who are just going out and following particular hashtags and spam commenting as a company page, please stop. You're giving company pages a bad reputation and you are killing all the good work that I'm trying to do.
Michelle calling folks out, but that's great. I'm so glad you cleared that up. And I must confess, I've been trying that. So of course, I have my personal page and I have the internal marketing podcast as a kind of a company page-ish for the podcast itself. But I've found that when I've started using the podcast page to engage in particular content posted by individuals on LinkedIn, particularly, again, content that's around internal marketing, employee advocacy, it introduces people to the brand. It introduces people to the podcast. Oh, what's this? They click, and it actually helps to generate and broaden the number of followers that the podcast has. And I found it to be very effective. So I certainly agree with that. Could you kind of share with us? I know you're obviously on LinkedIn, you're very active, and I'm sure you've been scouring the platform to see who is doing a great job. Could you perhaps share some high-level examples of companies and company pages that are getting it right on LinkedIn?
For sure. So I'll start with some of the bigger ones just because they're more well known by people, but that doesn't mean you have to be big to get success off LinkedIn. It just means that some of these companies have more resources than most of the small businesses combined, and they are ahead of the game. So one of my favorite company pages is actually the Netflix page. Now you would think, why is Netflix on LinkedIn? Why would they need a company page? And why would Michelle say that they're doing things well? What I love about that page is that they're not on there to obviously generate business or brand awareness. We're all pretty addicted to it thanks to COVID. But essentially what's happened is they use it because they want to attract the best talent. They want to have the best employees so that it just further reinforces their brand in the future. Now, what they do really, really, really well is they actually connect their content and their company values back to the shows that they produce. And given that we have the platform is currently split roughly 50-50 baby boomers versus Gen Z or Z, depending where you are in the world, basically what happens is you can see them attracting that Gen Z audience who are purpose-driven, who want to know what the company values are. The Netflix page does it brilliantly, and they actually humanize the company as well. So you quite often get to see employees. That is always the secret to a company page success. When you see an employee's face on a company page, number one, hands down piece of content that will perform, but more importantly, builds relationships. And that's what I'm all about. So that's number one. We have some other pages like the Gong page, Gong. That's also another one that's brilliant. But those guys have done such an amount of work off the platform that also marries up. They're really authentic. They add a ton of value. They give away so much and have their own personality. Now, you can't go and copy that personality because it's not just content that creates that brand. It's everything that they do off the platform for their employees just as much. Kerry-Ann, the other thing that I want people to know is that in the journey of LinkedIn's been around for 20 years, company pages have really only started to find their feet in the last 12 months. So we're seeing lots of smaller pages start to get traction, start to pay attention. We're starting to even see the LinkedIn trainers community all of a sudden open their eyes and say, oh, we should be paying attention and telling our clients to pay attention to company pages. So there's lots of great examples out there. There's lots of big examples like the Marketing Millennials company page, that has grown to almost 500,000 followers in 18 months, maybe 2 years. It has been phenomenal how fast Daniel grew that page. And I watched it grow and I almost had to say, is that even real? It's all about, he found that space. He's known for one thing, and the company page just reflects that consistently. So it's all about how do you make a company page human? But most of all, it's just like your personal content. How do you add value with it? You add value and it pays you back, and you don't need 500,000 followers. What you actually need is a niche community, 1,000 to 2,000 followers max on most company pages. Now, I'm not talking about the big multinationals or any of those kind of pages, but for most businesses in most industries, it's just that smaller number, which if you get 250 invite credits per month, you can have that up and running in a very short space of time. And that's the opportunity for people who might be listening today and not really put any love into their company page anytime recently, have kind of had it on the shelf going, it doesn't really get as much reach as my personal post. And that's true. I can't argue that point, but it doesn't mean that people aren't watching. And this is the thing that I say from a marketing perspective. What is the impression that people will find if they land on your page and it's neglected, got dust on the shelf? What does that say about your brand? So you can say all you like on your personal profile about how great the brand is, but if I go and do my own research, what do I find?
Michelle, I'm so glad you raised the example about marketing millennials and Daniel, right? Because I see both. And you're like you, I've been watching that growth over time, which I agree has been phenomenal. Daniel's individual page does very, very well also. I don't know how many followers he has right now. I know it's not a lot. He's also on Twitter, so I see him over there as well. But he's clearly doing well on both. And I question, and I don't know if you have any insights to share, if you may not know, obviously, his particular situation, but I think his example is a great example of how he's been using his personal brand to drive the success of the Marketing Millennials company page. And I think that's probably a question that a lot of our listeners have. It's okay. If we get it, the company page, it's important. We need to have our own real estate, the kind of content that works there. But where and how do we now start to connect those dots beyond just saying, use the 250 credits a month, follow my company page? How do you practically create that connection between the personal brand of the employees and allowing that to benefit the company page directly?
Yeah, I got to watch a really great interview the other day with Daniel, and basically his company page has about 400,000 followers and his personal profile has about 100,000. So there's a really big difference between the two in not the traditional way that we would expect. Normally we would think it's the other way around. So in his particular case, it's actually the company page and the success of that built up his personal brand. I'll send you the YouTube link so that you can put it in the show notes for people to watch it. I found it really interesting to see how he built it over time and how that's impacted his personal brand. When you see the kind of person that he is, I can see how being behind a company page probably suits his personality a little more. And it's been really interesting just to see how one built the other. And again, it's always about the combination. You can't just have either or. It's not a world where we live in an either or anymore. So one of the things that he found is his particular style of content, pulling, viral kind of content off Twitter, bringing it across. He was probably the first person to start doing that. And it works really well because viral content is viral content and it really resonates. And he's the one that picked up, actually, if I take that from here, promote, someone that's really high up in marketing, has a great brand. He piggybacked off their brand, which then built his brand. And around we go. It was really brilliant how he's done that. And I watched it just take off. At first I thought, is he buying followers? Like that's how fast it grew, because it was almost, just took off. Now, for other companies, what can you do? Are you going to end up with 500,000 followers overnight or, have this huge success story like this? I want to say for most company pages, no. I wish I could do it for my own page. But like I said, it's not a numbers game. It is a who do you build in your community? Now, if it was a numbers game, you would look and say, Michelle, I've got I think it's about 11 or 12,000 personal followers. I have about 2,500 sitting over on my company page. Now, on face value, you would think, of course, why wouldn't you follow the 11,500? Well, because when I built my company page, which is all about company pages, you only follow that if you have a genuine interest. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the show that I started out on LinkedIn building an amazing community built around the beauty industry and chemicals. Now, I obviously am not in that industry anymore. I had a swap. Now, half of my audience is that industry. So whilst I do get some crossover and I'm, still heavily involved training that industry on LinkedIn, ultimately the numbers aren't really that different. But I know that my company page is, you're only going to follow it if you have an interest in company pages. That for me is a concentrated pool of people that I should be nurturing that are more likely to be my clients than just some numbers I've collected. Because we all collect people over time, especially been working for a long time, changed jobs, and you've been on LinkedIn and had a profile for quite some time. Gets to a point where you change, what you're doing change, your focus changes, and there are probably people in your connections that you think, yeah, I'm not really that person anymore, but I don't want to delete them, because I might just want to talk to them one day. I might want to see what they're up to. So yeah, just think about your company page as the concentrate, and then your personal profile is where you get the numbers and that visibility as well.
I love that analogy. Michelle, we've really been having a great conversation. And I know there are some folks listening and probably feeling a little squeamish right now because we've been stepping on some toes and mashing some corns, as we say here in Jamaica, because it's like, oh, my company page isn't all that good. And if Michelle had a look at it, I probably would need to go to the company page doctor. So what would your advice be to folks managing company pages right now, again, on a platform like a LinkedIn, anywhere for that matter? What kind of audit process do you recommend they do to figure out what's working, what's not working, so that they can put in place the strategies they need to improve right now?
The first thing that I always recommend to people is to go back and check your page setup. Go back over all the little options that LinkedIn give us to fill in the boxes. 2 reasons why. Number 1, LinkedIn tells us that you get 11 times more clicks on your page if you complete things 100% and you have an active page. So there's an incentive. It used to be 30% more impressions. So no matter which way you do it, if your page is complete, LinkedIn will reward you. It will help you be seen by more people. The other reason that I do it is when you set up a company page, it takes about 15 minutes maximum, and you click through, and most people did it in a hurry just so that it could get a logo, which they would update on their personal profile so there's no little gray box. They put no love into it. They don't speak to their ideal audience, and it just feels, it's just half cooked. And so what I say to you is go back, especially the about section. Does it speak to your ideal audience? What's your vision for your company? What's your mission that you're on? How are you different to your competitors? Now, for those of you who think, oh, Michelle, it doesn't matter, no one's coming to see my company page, I've got some homework for you. Jump onto Google, Google your business name. I am very confident that for most businesses, your results will be in the top 5 on the first page of Google results. Now, you may be generating traffic from other places, but if people type in your company name in Google, the LinkedIn company page is right up at the top. And because LinkedIn's a trusted platform, what am I going to do if I'm researching? Click on it. And again, what are they going to find? So set the page up for success. It comes back to what resources do you have to manage the content on the profile. Now, you don't have to do a lot of content on company pages. You also have the option, if you wanted to, post multiple times on company pages. And that's actually something that Daniel raised about, growing his page, is he would post multiple times a day on the company page. Now, for most of us, that is more than we can manage. So I would say try and at least give something a post once a week, once every 2 weeks. Just keep it ticking over. You don't have to create everything from scratch. It doesn't always have to be brand new, but to have a presence and just keep it turning over. Don't just let it gather dust. But those two things, I think for most people, audit it, make sure it's got all the right settings, make sure that you completed the new features because we've had so many come through. Make sure that you do those and you'll get rewarded.
Great advice there, Michelle. So I know folks will definitely have a little mini toolkit that they can get started with before they call you, right? So, Michelle, this has been such a fantastic conversation. And we've reached a part of the conversation where I call it my final nugget, or your final nugget, I should say. And it's a part of the conversation where I invite all of my awesome guests to share of all the wonderful nuggets that you would have shared right throughout this conversation. In your view, what's the key nugget or the key takeaway that you believe our listeners should come away with having listened to everything you would have shared?
Look, I just read up on the 2022 B2B Thought Leadership Report from LinkedIn and Edelman, and it is all about brands creating thought leadership. Your company page is the best place that you can do that on LinkedIn. Now, it's not, as I said throughout this whole show, it is not at the expense of building your personal brands for your employees. It's in combination with. So build a brand that your team's proud of, use that platform to build them up, and ultimately lead your industry and build that B2B community. The challenges of the coming year, if we go through some of these financial challenges that are going on in the world as predicted, those brands who are top of mind will win more business. The problem that you have as a company, if you ignore my advice and choose to just sit back and say, yeah, I'm not so sure about these company pages, Michelle. I don't think that they're worth the effort. Here's what's going to happen. One of your competitors will put the time and effort in, and they're going to take your business away from you. So it's not an option, and they're leaving a void for your competitors to own that space. You will never catch them. That's what I'm trying to, warn people, not to be alarmist. But literally, I've seen it where people sit back and they say, yeah, Michelle, I don't think you're right. 2 years ago, they were very skeptical, maybe not so much now. But if you don't do it and your competitors do, you are going to miss opportunities. And what happens is they turn into revenue. That means your competitors have more revenue to do more things. And that is the moral of this story. If you don't want your competitors to win the race, go out and lead from the front.
That's right. So to sum it up right there, if you're not doing what you need to do with your company page, you're leaving money on the table. That's really the bottom line. So great salient advice there, Michelle. Michelle, I'm so very grateful for your taking the time to join me here today to share some wonderful information, insights, and really a new perspective coming from other discussions I would have had on this very podcast, and just showing too how it all ties in. It's not really an either or. And my final question, again, a standard question I ask all my guests. I know a lot of exciting things are happening with you right now, Michelle. Could you share with me, how can we, the internal marketing tribe, support you?
Look, Kerry-Ann, thanks again for having me on the show. The best way that people can support me, if you've been inspired by this conversation and you want to take action, but you don't know exactly how to do it, I've co-authored 2 brilliant books, which if you could purchase those books, it will help you and it helps me. So one of them is called Business Gold. So backs onto your golden nuggets. Business Gold is the world's first book dedicated to company pages. It is a step-by-step instruction so that you know how to, get the most out of your company page. Also recently released the LinkedIn branding book, which is about building personal and business brands on LinkedIn. Those 2 tools, everything that I know in 2 places, honestly, I can't believe how much value's in them. So I would appreciate the support if you are interested in building your business brand, interested in getting the most out of your company page. That's how you can support me. And I appreciate you all.
Oh, that's wonderful. I bought the second book for sure. I need to go and get the first book, but I just bought the second one. And yes, I encourage everybody. We're going to leave all of the links about where folks can go and find and purchase your wonderful books in the show notes. And I'm sure that you'd want folks to connect and follow you on LinkedIn as well. I highly recommend following Michelle, guys. I mean, awesome content, really very generous in everything that you share. And so definitely reach out to Michelle and give her a follow and perhaps a connect on LinkedIn. And Michelle, it's just been so wonderful having you here. Thank you so very much for taking the time and sharing so openly and so generously with us. And please allow me to wish you all the very best in everything that you do.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Internal Marketing Podcast. I hope you got some great takeaways from this conversation. And if you haven't already subscribed to this podcast, then please join the tribe. And don't forget, feel free to share this podcast with anyone whom you believe will find it valuable as well. I'm your host, Kerry-Ann Stimson, and I look forward to your joining me next time.